Hello and welcome back to the Fourmation Podcast. This is episode number 43. For 42, we were the Threemation for hopefully one time only, but we're back this week to all four of us being involved. And it's good to be back with having four of us. Harry, you're back. You had a nice breakaway, I take it, but also you made it back for that draw with Man United on the weekend.
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. I wasn't expecting a point whatsoever. I think it's the first time since 2008-9 when I first went to St Mary's. I went there not expecting anything. And we got a point, probably should have been 3. Armstrong had a couple chances to win it. But if you offered me a point at the start of the game, I'd be more than happy with that. So, yeah, we've got our season underway, 1 point, and, Newcastle up next.
Yeah, and we'll come on to talk about that a bit later on. But I do think a lot of people were writing Southampton off before that game, probably wrongly, given just how much the home advantage has helped teams so far this season. Devon, another good weekend for your team as well. I think it's probably surprised you a little bit, hasn't it? Just how good the start has been. I'm not sure you were that optimistic going into it, were you?
No, I mean, the signings, like I said, have been a massive advantage to that. Darren Moore's done a real good job, and obviously some of the players I know are up to it. He's thrown straight in, and those players have actually got us out of a position where, especially in them early games where you're expecting us to lose a couple because, they're still gelling, we're actually picking up scrappy wins at times whilst we're coming. And I think on Saturday showed a first cohesive performance where, even when we were under the cosh, we dealt with it. I think they only really had 2-3 shots that went close. And obviously, Bailey Peacock-Farrell saving the penalty, absolutely brilliant penalty save. And then obviously the scenes that ensued afterwards, which I think if you think about it as well, we got a point off of Charlton, who will be in top 6 probably at the end of the season. Rotherham will be up there. We've beat them already. Things are starting to pan out and shape out really well. It's just about that when we do concede that first goal, how do we react? And when we get that first loss, how do we go on from that?
Yeah, absolutely right. And Sam, your team, Grimsby Town, it must have been a good few weeks, but also kind of maybe a nervy couple of weeks where you were almost just waiting for your season to get underway. I believe that is happening this weekend. If that's right, you must be pretty excited for that.
At home to Weymouth, so it's exciting to finally get underway, considering our game last weekend was called off, which is actually going to be on telly. There's going to be a later kickoff away to Bromley. So disappointing that we didn't get to see that, but finally getting underway and excited for what we can do this season. There's a real buzz around the club, even though we've got relegated last season. We're back in non-league. There's a lot of optimism around the new ownership and what we can do in the future. So looking forward to getting underway.
Yeah, absolutely. And Norwich's season as well, obviously, gets started this weekend too. But we might come on to mention that a little bit. It just gets started, but the goal difference is in the negative for some reason. I don't know who we've played or who we've lost to. Before we move on to kind of look ahead to some of the big games coming up this weekend, looking back on last weekend at FPL, because we like to keep you updated on this. In terms of our league, we told you last week that Kun Aguero topped it. That is still the case after game week 2. They scored 85 points this week, so a pretty good return. They weren't quite the highest scorers for the last game week, though. The top points scored in our league was 86, and that was shared by 2 players who were Quinn Godfrey and Ollie Cotton, a couple of mates from mine from school. So well done to those 2. Quinn's doing particularly well, riding high in 3rd place. If you want to join that league, then the code is, of course, in the description, and you can also find it on our socials. As for the head-to-head, I don't really want to talk about this, really. The head-to-head between the 4 formation. Devon hasn't looked at it yet. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, Devon. You had the best week out of the 4 of us, and you beat Sam.
The only time this season.
I don't think that's saying much, because I did pretty poorly.
Which is,
never mind.
I think that's your first win in the head-to-head, Devon. To be honest, I can't believe you were the highest scorer, but still didn't have Antonio somehow, because Antonio almost turned my week from very poor to below par. I still wasn't too impressed by it because Harry still managed to beat me. So Harry's got 2 wins out of 2 on that front. But we'll keep an eye on that as the weeks go on. Devon's not sure he's going to be able to live up to that ever again, but I don't know about that.
Honestly, last week I thought, I like semi-remembered my team, and I was like, I think I've had a good week, and I looked at my points, and it was still 10 points below average. And that's me most. That actually sums up. That may as well be in my profile, I think.
Yeah. So we will keep an eye on that as the weeks go on. As we said, we'll move on now then to take a look at some of the games coming up this weekend. And there are several juicy ones, to be honest. I think the big clubs, maybe this is wrong of me to say, but they often get kind of eased into the season. Maybe I'm in terms of fixtures, maybe I'm saying that because my team has certainly not been eased into it in terms of fixtures. But now we start to see some clashes between the big teams. I suppose we had one last week in the form of Arsenal and Chelsea, if you're counting Arsenal as a big team. But there's a couple coming up this weekend. I've got to that point now, the first of which is on Saturday lunchtime, is at the Etihad Stadium. This involves Arsenal as well. So the fact I've just questioned that they're a big club makes me look a right tit now I've got to this stage. But it is Manchester City against Arsenal on Saturday at the Etihad Stadium. Arsenal going into this game, which is a pretty daunting game, you'd have to say, having lost their opening 2. Harry, do you give them any chance of getting a result at the Etihad?
Look, George, it's football. Anything can happen. But do I? Probably not. I mean, they'll certainly be helped. You know, they've got momentum back. They beat West Brom 6-0 in what was technically, well, for us anyway, yesterday. Yes, West Brom did, I believe, have 6 debutants, and there was a lot of people under 20 that started. I think Snodgrass and Adam Reach were just a couple of players that you probably wouldn't count as that. And even with Snodgrass, he's played most of his fixtures, or all of his fixtures this season, for the under 23s. But you know, you can only beat what's in front of you, and that will help them get momentum. You know, they started players like Odegaard, Saka, Aubameyang, and when they were 4-5-0 up, they still brought on Lacazette to get a goal as well. So it'll bring confidence back into the squad. I think they'll certainly be happy they didn't have to face an in-form West Brom side, because I think they might have struggled. I know West Brom haven't been brilliantly defensively, but I think they would have still struggled that game. So the fact that they've now finally got their first win on the board, it'll give them a certain amount of hope, a certain amount of optimism, but I can still see it be a convincing win for Manchester City, even though they don't have a striker.
Yeah, and looking back on last weekend for Arsenal, obviously we covered last week their opening day defeat to Brentford, but they went down 2-0 to Chelsea last week. Sam, where do you stand on that result in terms of, I think there's been a bit of a split in terms of public opinion. And some have said Arsenal simply weren't up to it, and you know it just continues a really poor mood around there. And others have suggested that Arsenal weren't too bad; it was just Chelsea are just a bit too good. Where do you sit on that one?
Yeah, it's probably a mixture of both. I think they talked about a bit on M&F. Their game plan going into the game was clearly to stop the balls getting into Lukaku, trying to stop Mason Mount and Kai Havertz, which they did well at the start with the 2 deep line midfield players. But once Havertz and Mount started to drop a bit deeper, they got dragged out, and they managed to get the ball to Lukaku a lot, and he just absolutely manhandled Pablo Mari for most of the game, I think. And they had that period of real dominance in the first half, obviously Chelsea. In the second half, I think Arsenal were a bit better at stopping Chelsea's attacks. But yeah, like you say, Chelsea are going to be up there. They're one of the title favourites. It was always going to be a hard game for a young Arsenal squad. A lot of new signings to ingratiate into the team. So it was always going to be a difficult game. And I don't think they did too poorly in all senses, but it wasn't the best day for them, really.
No, absolutely not. It's interesting when we talk about going to the Etihad and just how daunting that prospect is, because obviously last weekend that I was there watching my team, and when I look back on it and think about how I felt before the game, I can remember checking my phone at 2:00 to see the lineup, seeing the City one, and thinking, "Oh, there's no De Bruyne here. Mahrez is on the bench. Sterling's on the bench. Foden's not even included either." And you see that before the game and you think, hang on, maybe we've got just a smidgen of a chance here. And then the game starts 2 minutes in and you're camped in your own half and you're thinking, how are we going to have a hope here? So that kind of just emphasised to me even more. I know we've spoken about this before, but it emphasised to me the squad depth is just, it's
ridiculous.
It's crazy, isn't it, Devon? How do Arsenal go about stopping them?
I think they're going to really struggle. Obviously, the biggest way that they need to do is probably absorb the pressure from City, hit them on the counter. But I don't think Arsenal are that good on the counter anymore. And like we said, with the squad depth, City are just unbelievable. And I think even if you pitched up their second team against Arsenal, they'd finish higher in the table come end of the season. And I just think Manchester City, obviously, the loss at the start of the season sort of kick-fired them last weekend, and they took their frustrations out on yourselves, George. But I just can't see anything other than a Manchester City win.
No, I'm not sure anyone can, to be honest. Harry, have you got anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, sort of similar to Devon in the fact that Tottenham have already Manchester City have already lost a game this season. That was to, their North London rival Spurs, that Arsenal's North London rival Spurs, that is. So there was a blueprint to win the game. But looking at what Devon says, he's not wrong in the fact that I don't think they're as good in the counter-attack. I don't look at all their players. Man for man, I don't think they're that much worse. But if you're looking at the systems, I don't see them as a counter-attacking side, so they're going to have to try and find a way to make the tactic, make the system work. Because otherwise, I think they'll just get blown away as they usually do against Manchester City.
Yeah, I think probably even Arsenal fans don't hold out much hope for this Saturday, and could be an interesting fixture for them. Should they lose it, that would leave them still on 0 points. And after the international break, Norwich go to the Emirates. So Norwich are obviously going to be on 3 points by that stage. Obviously.
Is that the second fixture?
So yeah, that could be one to keep an eye on in a couple of weeks' time. But we shall move on to talk about one of the 3 p.m. games on Saturday. Harry will probably be particularly interested in how this one pans out as it involves his team. Southampton, they head to St James's Park to take on Newcastle. Newcastle, like Arsenal, Sam, are yet to pick up a point this season. They were also knocked out of the Carabao Cup last night, so that's kind of another disappointing note for them. There's going to be a lot of pressure this weekend on Steve Bruce to deliver a result, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, they will take heart from their home record against Southampton in the league. They've only lost one of the last 16 against the Saints in the Premier League. So they'll take heart from that recent record. But like you say, things have soured quickly already this season. They've kept just 2 clean sheets in their last 24 at home. So that's not a good sign for them. And the way Southampton ended their game against Man United, they would have taken a lot of positives from that. And I think, and also obviously the thrashing of Newport in the League Cup, so they'll have some momentum on their side. So I think this could easily be a win for Southampton, despite their obvious recent record against Newcastle at St James's Park.
Love that, Sam. Love that from you.
You're welcome.
Harry, are you kind of viewing this one as one that your players can maybe enjoy with a bit more freedom, in that you're going to an arena in which all the pressure is going to be put upon Newcastle? It's obviously a big game for yourselves as well, but you obviously won't have kind of that cauldron of noise, which is what I'm trying to say is there's going to be a lot of tension in there, but it's going to be directed towards their players more than your own.
You're not wrong, but I think any game away from home this season, more than any other season ever, it's going to be very, very difficult to get anything out of it. I know we talk about statistics and records and the fact that Saints, they've only won one of their last 16, as Sam said, but that does play in players' mind, or at least I think that would play in your mind if you're thinking, I'm traveling like 10 hours upwards to get there. And that's all the little intricate things. That's probably why Saints have a great record at home against Newcastle. Flip it on its head. But yeah, you're probably right in the fact that Newcastle's fans are expectant, especially because Steve Bruce is going to become or in the mounting amount of pressure, despite the fact that they have only made one signing. I think they finished 12th last season as well. Maybe a bit low. I'm not too sure. But even going into this game, neither team have won a game in the league, and I think that's still a certain amount of pressure, because if you go into the break and you're still either in the relegation zone or you haven't picked up a win, that's going to put a tremendous amount of pressure. Because I know Saints, they drew against Manchester United and they beat Newport, but if they lose to Newcastle, then all the form and everything from the last week sort of gets put in the bin.
Devon, I saw quite an interesting piece this morning on The Athletic. I think it was a writer who's pretty focused on Newcastle. And he was saying how the defeat to Burnley in the League Cup is a more damaging one than people would maybe assume, because in the last 2 seasons, Newcastle's fans have clung on to a cup competition and a run in there as kind of a side note from the league, which has been pretty miserable for them. So how much of a blow can you see that being, particularly if they were to play Southampton and lose at the weekend? They're going to be in uproar, aren't they?
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, Newcastle really don't have much joy anyway under Steve Bruce. Even if they had the players, the style's not pretty. And obviously, Steve Bruce always seems to be one game away from the sack. So even now, the early pressure, as I mentioned, is still on. But this is a Newcastle side that did score 2 against West Ham, and at times challenged them. But obviously the quality prevailed. And Southampton, they've been known before, Sarri, that they've come off of 2 great performances, one against Manchester United, one against in the League Cup, and then failed to show up for these kind of matches, which has cost them in the past. But I think the form is on Southampton's side. I think there seems to be a decent feeling around them at the minute anyway, despite the individuals that they've lost in recent weeks. And like you said, Newcastle, even though the support will be there, it's just not looking. It's looking pretty bleak. And even with Newcastle, it sort of takes them a few weeks to get into a season anyway.
If you look at Newcastle, they will certainly have hope that the Saints never seem to be comfortable on a 1-0, 2-0 lead. So if they go into the 60th minute, say if Southampton have taken the lead and they're 1-0 up, I think Saints have already, I know Southampton have already dropped 5 points this season inside 2 games from winning positions. Last season, they dropped 23 points from winning positions. They're not comfortable holding a lead. So I think Newcastle could have a certain amount of optimism knowing whatever the score is, if we just get a goal, the game's ours to be taken. And the problem is, you look at Southampton's previous results, a lot of their goals that they've conceded have come from individual errors. So just keep knocking on the door. And I'm sure, players like Callum Wilson, players like Almiron, players like St Maximan, if they're all fit for the game, they're going to cause the defenders so many problems.
What do you mean, Harry? You went in front last night and then scored 7 more for good measure. I don't know what you're on about.
I'd be more than happy to see that on Saturday, but against teams that have got Premier League quality. I know Newport have a great record in the Carabao Cup. They got to the 4th round last year. They've beaten top teams like Leicester in the past, but Newcastle will be a different proposition, especially because I think Newport had to make 6 changes from their last game because of injuries. I don't expect Newcastle have that sort of problem.
Do you think Hasenhüttl will maybe be tempted to bring in a few from that cup win, or was it kind of, I suppose, the fact that the league game before you put a good shift in makes it difficult to rotate that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people that did impress, but I think a draw against Manchester United in a weird way, or not even really in a weird way, is a lot more impressive than an 8-0 win against Newport. You look at players like Livramento, he's had a fantastic start, the 18-year-old. Adams and Armstrong up front, they've played together twice, but they only look phenomenal as a partnership. I think, you look at the players that weren't involved yesterday, those are the players that will probably come back in. They've been rested for a reason. And, you look at Southampton now, we're sort of talking off air about it or off the podcast. Hasenhüttl's been quite brave in saying that, his squad's ready now. And now there's that level of expectation. Whereas last season, when there was injuries, he could always go on the back of, well, we've only got one left back, so we're going to have to play a centre back there, or we'll have to play a winger up front. Now he said that he's happy with his squad. The pressure's now on. The pressure is seriously on. And if they lose to Newcastle, it could be worrying, even though we're only 3 games into the season.
The blueprint is obvious, though, to beat Newcastle. And you stop the obvious characters, then you've got a really good chance. You get those legs in midfield in particular, because I think Newcastle really lack mobility in that area. They've shown that in their defeats already this season. Later on in games, they seem to struggle quite a lot. So I think the blueprint is obvious to beat them. And you get towards the end of the game with a close scoreline, you've got all the chance in the world.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game for sure, that one. And I think difficult one for the bookies to predict, and I'll certainly be staying away for it. I hope it isn't included on the Super 6, but I'm sure it will be, given it's a 3 p.m. game. But I think this weekend, it is Saturday, which is kind of filled with the more exciting games, you could say, because on Saturday at 5:30, it's Liverpool against Chelsea. And also, it's kind of an individual battle that will take place in that game, which I think most people are really looking forward to seeing, which is, of course, Van Dijk against Lukaku. Sam, I think this has been covered on Monday Night Football. It was covered after the Super Sunday, and it's probably been covered on every podcast covering the Premier League this week. But the Romelu Lukaku performance last weekend was something to behold, wasn't it?
Yeah, in one game he showed how much he's come along in those 2 years he's been away from the Premier League under Antonio Conte's stewardship at Inter Milan. I think he's obviously got the pace, he's obviously got the power, but he's added a lot more finesse to his game. His hold-up play in particular in that Arsenal game was brilliant. The way, like I mentioned already, the way he just manhandled Pablo Mari whenever he got the ball to his feet, he backed up against him and brought other players into play, the likes of Mount and Havertz, and the creative players he's got around in there at Chelsea is only going to be to his benefit, as we saw in that Arsenal game. But like you say, this is a whole nother test against Liverpool with Van Dijk back in the centre of defence. He's one of the best defenders in the world, if not the best defender. So he can, as they said on M&F, he can defend in 1-on-1, 2-on-1 situations with ease. But as we say, Lukaku's come on a long way since we last saw him in the Premier League, so it should be a really good battle. These two teams have had identical starts to the league. Liverpool have taken the most shots so far. Chelsea have faced the fewest. So there's a lot of things going into this game that excite the neutrals, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think I'm not entirely sure how the Liverpool fans feel about it going in, but I personally worry slightly for Van Dijk going into this one, not because he's not physically fit, because I think the fact that he's come through 290 minutes already unscathed suggests that he is more than ready to start. I would just worry because of the challenges that he has faced so far have been nothing compared to what he is about to come up against. Norwich on the opening day, while we were trying to break through in the opening half an hour or whatever it was, we didn't really lay a glove on Liverpool. And I think while Burnley are very physical and kind of put themselves about at Liverpool, and he had a couple of situations to deal with, I still don't think that is anything close to the level that he's going to face on Saturday. Would that be a concern of yours as well, Dev?
Yeah, I don't actually think the main battle is between that. I think with how Lukaku plays, obviously, like Sam said, he likes to, as soon as that arm sort of comes round and like sort of pats him on the shoulder, and unless Van Dijk can get round and sort of nick the ball beforehand or sort of drops off a little bit, it's the battle afterwards. If you're in that situation, you've got to think whoever plays at the second central defensive position has got to watch either if Werner's playing his run round, because obviously Lukaku, that first step has got to be in there, and then Tsimikas is on the side. Where's Havertz going to be? Where's Reece James going to be on the overlap? Marcos Alonso's played a lot more forward now, so they're sort of attacking as a five, and it's it's whether the likes of Fabinho can drop in and sort of win the ball before it gets to Lukaku. That's going to be the main battle. But as you say, Van Dijk still fragile, still 80% fit, but his defensive brain is fantastic.
Harry, Devon's kind of hinted at it there in his last point, but do you think it's maybe wrong to look at this game as just one individual battle because of the quality that both teams possess all over the pitch?
Yeah, I think the point that you made it earlier was interesting about Virgil van Dijk maybe not having a big test so far this season, which is correct, but I also think it's a good thing in the fact that he had 2 games to sort of get into the season, and now he's got Lukaku rather than getting Chelsea first game of the season. But I think the game might just be won on the wings, because of Liverpool's attacking quality, due to the fact they've got Mane, due to the fact they've got Salah. If Harvey Elliott comes off the bench, all 3 of them are absolutely brilliant. But also, if you look at the Liverpool fullbacks against the Chelsea fullbacks, that's basically how Chelsea won the last game. Tierney was way too far up the pitch basically all game, and that's how they scored their opening 2 goals. And you look at whether Skimas plays or whether Robertson plays, both of them have to be very, very disciplined and not bomb up the field, because otherwise Reece James will just make an absolute meal of it, and he'll just get so much space down there. So yeah, I think the fullbacks of both teams have to be very disciplined, and the wingers, if they do get the space, have to make the most of it when they get it.
You got to look at the managerial battle as well. I think although Man City are the champions right now, Tuchel's the man to beat, really, beating Pep 3 times last season, took his Chelsea side to Anfield last season as well, and won as well. So, and there's a history between Tuchel and Klopp as well. Tuchel took over Klopp at Mainz and at Dortmund, and they're 2 German managers who have had a great impression on this league already. So I think that's a battle to look out for as well, how each of them lines up their teams and how they try to outwit each other in this game.
I suppose we should probably remember as well that obviously Liverpool's Anfield record last year was broken, but their record at Anfield with a full crowd still dates back to that time when they were beaten by Chelsea. What was it, 5 years ago now? So it's still a big beast to overcome, isn't it, Devon? The fact that you've got to go there with that Anfield crowd, and I know there was a load of stuff on Twitter over the weekend about how they sung "You'll Never Walk Alone" and then they were quiet for the rest of it. But there's still something about it, isn't there?
Yeah, you'd expect that, especially in the magnitude of the game. No offense to Burnley, but if anyone's excited for Burnley at home, then you probably need a little bit more enjoyment and elsewhere. But like I said, the game is a fantastic one. It's setting up to be. Everyone wants goals and stuff, so it will probably be 0-0, especially with it being live on Sky. But it should be. It's got all the ingredients to be 2 attacking sides. Obviously, as you've both mentioned, that all 3 of us have mentioned. 3 of you have Jesus, apologies. This is like the actual recording of normal podcast. With Chelsea's fullbacks going forward, and then obviously Liverpool counter-attacking that with their wingers and fullbacks, it's just going to be who's going to outscore the other, or who can deal with that sort of press better. I don't know what point I'm trying to make.
Do you think they'll be ambitious? Do you think both teams will be ambitious in the attack, or do you think it will be more the fact of none of them want to concede a stupid goal? So both sets of fullbacks on each side might just be a bit more cautious than if they were playing a Burnley or if they were playing a Norwich or now an Arsenal as well, because they're not as big as they used to be.
I'm not sure that. Go on, Dev.
No, go on.
I was just going to say I'm not sure that the fullbacks of either Liverpool and Chelsea are. I'm not sure they have it in their system to be cautious. I think someone like Reece James is just...
Yeah, it's wing backs in Chelsea's case, isn't it? Because Tuchel settled on this 3-4-2-1 formation. So it looks like... And they play quite flexible with it as well. Like I say, with Mount and Havertz dropping back a lot in that Arsenal game to draw the opposition midfielders out to create space then for Lukaku to pick up the ball. And then he feeds it to one of the wide players, one of the bombing on wing backs like Reece James, like you say. So I think he settled on that, and they play quite a big part in the attack, those wing backs for Chelsea.
But even though the Liverpool ones are part of a 4, they're pretty much wing backs, aren't they?
Yeah.
They don't have much of a care. They obviously do have a care for their defensive work, but they're all the time trying to do it. Devon, what were you going to add? Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, you'd expect either Chelsea, if they set up with Jorginho or if Trevor Chalobah's in midfield, that especially as we saw in the Euros, that how good Jorginho was in front of that back two with Chiellini and Bonucci, sort of protecting it, winning in midfield, or dropping back into a back three and sort of, like attacking. Obviously, when Liverpool go forward, you'd expect it to be, Jota, Mane, and Salah probably. So a 3-on-3 battle, it's more favourable. So, and likewise with Liverpool is because Chelsea are more not conservative, but they'll hold possession a lot better than Liverpool will in terms of going forward. They'll probably be a little bit more slow press rather than flying at them like Liverpool like to do. You'd be hoping anyway that the likes of Fabinho and maybe Keita, if he starts, to sort of try and frustrate and win the ball back in them deep areas, and then that's where the attack will start.
In the system that Chelsea play, they have the luxury. They started Jorginho and Kovacic in midfield, and they had the luxury of bringing on N'Golo Kante later in the game to bring that energy. So that's a big weapon for them, the midfielders they have, and if they can bring, they drop one of those three and then bring one of them on later to provide that energy when they're maybe holding the lead or chasing the game. That's a huge weapon for them, I feel.
It's likewise up front as well, because if Werner doesn't start, he could come on and stretch that Liverpool defence as well with his runs, and Pulisic can come on as well and drive through from the right inside. So there's plenty of options. Same with Ziyech as well. It's a good side from this Chelsea, as we said about them stepping up and sort of City. Sit there being City's biggest rivals, and I think Liverpool, we're probably yet to see I think Liverpool going a little bit unnoticed anyway, because we're talking about these teams, but Liverpool need to go and prove it if they are anyway.
Well, it's the same team pretty much that got 97 points and 99 points for Liverpool, so they're still a team to fear. They're still a really good team, so it should be a really good game.
And it's an interesting one as well, maybe a decision Klopp has got to make. I think Salah and Mane are pretty much nailed on, but Diogo Jota has had a good start to the season. However, Firmino is now seemingly a bit more match sharp. If it was up to you, Harry, who do you think you go with? Would you stick with the man in form in Jota?
You've got to. If you've got a player in form, there's no point taking them out of the team, especially if they're performing in the Premier League. It's got to be Jota for me.
I think Devon was hinting at Jota as well there. I don't know. I think he likes Firmino in the big games. I don't know.
I'd actually like to see Firmino as that centre forward and actually start with Salah and Jota. I think.
Oh,
Mane.
Even though he scored last weekend, but I think last season he enjoyed a poor one. And out of that front three, I think Mane is sort of the one that'll be the one to leave rather, or the one to replace. Unfortunately, I know Harry loves him, but
what about
more of a cycle that he'll be the one.
What about that space in behind Reece James though? Do you want Mane exploiting that with his pace, or do you? I'm not. I think it's a fair enough suggestion, because I think Mane hasn't been particularly impressive. I know he got his goal, like you say, so maybe that's an option they'll use.
But I mean, like you say that, but Reece, as we know, we've voiced over the Euros, Reece James can get back and defend well. So you'd look on the opposite side whether Marcus Alonso is going to be more defensive on that side, and you look at that battle between him and Salah. Whether is Chilwell not fit? I've just great research from us. But if Alonso does start, then Salah's going to be in every time, and I think coming on that sort of the last back post run, I think Jota's really good in them positions as well.
Yeah, I have to say I've enjoyed that last kind of 10 minutes, and it suggests hopefully what we think will be a really entertaining game, because we've spoken about so many different individual battles there. There was me thinking it would be mainly about Lukaku and Van Dijk, which I'm sure will be a great one in itself. But it's going to be an exciting game for sure. I think on Sunday, Man United head to Wolves, don't they? Spurs have got Watford this weekend. So there's a few watchable ones for sure. Before we round this one up this week, we thought we'd touch on something that we didn't really mention too much in our kind of preview for the season. And that kind of surrounds the the players who could be pushing for the Golden Boot this year. The reason we kind of want to touch on that is that there's one player who won the Golden Boot last year, who we now know is going to be staying at his club, at his club. Harry Kane, of course.
The club who raised him.
Yeah, the club who raised him, his boyhood club. Before we kind of mention some of the players who we like who we like as shouts for that award, Sam, are you surprised that he's come to that decision, or did you think it was kind of rolling towards that point as we got closer to the deadline?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily surprised. I think Kane would have wanted it to happen himself, as we've seen over the last couple of weeks. But as we already mentioned before, Daniel Levy is a very, I don't know what word to use, stringent businessman. He's not going to, until he gets the right price, he's not going to budge on his evaluation of a player. And obviously City haven't met that with their bid so far. So he's staying a Tottenham player.
Absolutely he is. Harry, what did you immediately think of that yesterday? Would you have liked to see him move on and maybe win those trophies, or are you in a way pleased for Spurs in that, they keep their hero in a way? Although, is he their hero anymore? I don't know.
The reception he got at Wolves, you can sort of say that there's no hard feelings between him and the Tottenham fans, and really vice versa. But I saw somewhere that now they're just going to try and offer him £400,000 a week, but that's at least how much he wants. But you look at Daniel Levy and you saw sort of what Sam said. I think he'd happily accept less money next summer just to say, I'm going to put my foot down, and that's the decision. No one can change that, because you've seen it with multiple players, Bale, Modric and others in the past. So, yeah, I was a bit shocked that he's staying, just because I think I was listening to it. I think it was TalkSport. I know a lot of people don't agree with a lot of their opinions, but they finished 7th last season with Harry Kane. So they're not going to do that. I don't think they're going to do that much worse without him. So if I was them, I'd rebuild the squad and then try and hopefully get a top 4 spot from their point of view. But yeah, I'm slightly surprised he's still there, but it must mean that Manchester City are looking elsewhere and have an interest in a different striker.
Yeah,
George got really red there.
Yeah, that's the
started to build.
I think that's the only time we're going to mention TalkSport. Alex Crook, if you're watching, then stop watching. We don't want you around these parts.
He's burnt a link to the future.
a certain Erling Haaland will become available next year, and that'll be obviously the worry for Kane, because I think City will definitely lean towards him, unfortunately, due to the age difference, I think.
Yeah, you do feel as if Kane will think, was this the only chance? I don't know. I suppose if he puts in another season with 30 Premier League goals or whatever around that mark, then he's still going to be in demand.
To be fair, if this Mbappe thing doesn't happen, Madrid have shown that they're not actually poor with the bids that they're putting in, so Kane could still go there.
He certainly could. I suppose when it comes down to the Golden Boot then, Devon, can you see Harry Kane getting his head in gear as a Tottenham player again and producing it for them again? Because I think some people do maybe have their doubts. I don't know. What's your take on that?
I think Harry Kane started. It's a completely different situation, but even when Tottenham have had their poor seasons, Harry Kane has still been up there in the Golden Boot shout, and he's always remained professional. It's probably when that first goal comes. If it comes this weekend or next weekend, then I think he'll just carry on. It'll snowball, but I don't think we'll see. It just depends. Like they can't say too much, because as soon as that link up between Son and Kane reignites, it's deadly. And we saw how good Harry Kane was, not just at goal scoring last season, but his actual in-play combinations. Hold on, let's get word back up. They get 11 assists. So I think Harry Kane's too good not to do that. And now, I think that Manchester City move, like we said, is gone now. And I think that dream move to a bigger club, unless Manchester United coming for him or something like that next summer, has gone. And I think his focus now should be on trying to get that all-time Premier League goal scoring record. Because I can't see Tottenham winning any sort of trophies in the next few years unless they have a good FA Cup run or something like that. But yeah.
No, but they have made a good start. So fair play to Nuno there. I think he's proven a few people wrong with that start, but it is still early days. In terms of the Golden Boot, then, there are so many names that you could kind of throw in for this one, which makes it difficult to kind of get it exactly on the money because any of these players could go on a run. Sam, which kind of names have you got written down? I imagine there might be one player who we've already kind of raved about for his performance last week, which you've got in your thoughts.
Yes, Romelu Lukaku is definitely amongst those players to be up there for the Golden Boot. I mean, at the age of 28, we've got a man coming back into the league. He's already got 114 Premier League goals to his name and has refined his game so much, as I've already said. So with the creative talent he's got around him at Chelsea, he's going to have lots and lots of chances created for him throughout the season. And he's become a lot more of a clinical finisher throughout his time. So I think he's definitely going to be up there for sure.
Harry, what about you? What sort of names have you got in the equation?
Yeah, I'm the exact same as Sam. I don't want to say the same thing, but I think he is the clear name. You know, you look at Manchester United, and everyone on his last season said, "Oh, he was too big, he was too slow, he wasn't great." He's still got 15 goals. A man that is completely out of form. Apparently, he's still got 15 goals. And like Sam said about half an hour ago, he went to Italy and he's come back a completely different man. He's already got a goal to his name, and I think he's going to get a lot more. Because you look at Manchester City, you go, "There's no clear goal scorer there at the moment." You look at Manchester United, another title rival, you go, well, I'm not too sure there's going to be a lot of goals in that team, but there's not a main man unless Greenwood somehow has a phenomenal season or Cavani stays fit. So I think there is one clear name, and I think that is Romelu Lukaku.
Salah's got to be up there as well, because since he's joined Liverpool, he's not really had a season where he's had a massive drop off in goals scored. 98 Premier League goals in 160 appearances. It's hard to look past that, especially with the start he's had. 1 goal, 2 assists. He's very much still contributing to the Liverpool attack, and with their team back to full strength and back full of confidence again, you've got to have him up there as well.
I just look at Lukaku's game. I know it's one game against Arsenal, and I know he only scored 1, but he had 8 shots in that game. And a guy that doesn't care where he takes shots from, it is a dangerous one. It's a very dangerous one, because if he won't keep that number up for the entire season. Don't get me wrong, there aren't going to be defenders as not bad, because that's a bit harsh, but mentally weak as Arsenal's, let's say. But if you could get 4 or 5 shots off a game, I think Kane got 4 on average last season. You saw how many goals he scored. So if you could keep that number 4 or 5 up and most of them be in the box, when you got a player as clinical as Lukaku, when you got a team around him that will get balls on a plate on the penalty spot area, especially if he's on penalties as well. But then I guess Jorginho will keep that due to his impressive record there. I think Lukaku's got to be the main name. But yeah, like you say, Salah or Kane if he can start banging in the goals. Because now, like you say, his future's clear.
Lukaku is clearly a lot fitter as well. He said that in interviews before, talking about how Antonio Conte trained and that Inter team has made sure that his fitness has come a long way as well. I
can't believe none of you have said Aubameyang. He scored a hat-trick against West Brom reserves last night. He's won it before. None of you have said Aubameyang. Devon, you look like you're itching to throw another name into the mix.
Well, I think you're all underestimating who Lukaku actually has posters of on his walls, who Lukaku bases all his game off. And since when Lukaku first came to England at Chelsea, he was watching videos of this man. He's already admitted it in numerous interviews that you probably won't be able to find on the internet, not because they don't exist. The person that Lukaku models his game off the most, Mikel Antonio. I think I think with Antonio will have a good season. Now he's cemented one place and as a sort of a main forward. And I think when he were at Sheffield Wednesday as well, to bring us back into it, because we all love a reflection. when he was in that centre forward role and solely in that centre forward role, he was really, really brilliant. But he just needed to fine tune that finishing, and now he's sort of fine tuned it. We saw that how Leicester couldn't deal with his strength, and even for the likes of Van Dijk, and they're going to struggle against how rigid he is and how vigorous he can be. But will he score more than 14 goals, which is his career best in a season? Probably not. I think one person.
I think he could if he stays fit. I think he could if he stays fit the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, I think his goal. When you look at the back, I think he could finish top of the goal involvement charts, because I think he'll pick up so many assists as well as goals. But I think one player we've not mentioned that could be an outside shout, and I know he started really well for his club. I think Danny Ings might flourish a little bit this season. In terms of now he's got better players around him. He's got a creative spark in Emi Buendia, who's a lot more, even though like obviously
stick it in, Devon.
Just stick it away.
It's how he sat there. I'm sort of just bashing his head like as I'm doing it. But I'm just gonna keep this on now. As mentioned, I think he's got better creators around him now. There's a better there's more creativity. And as we saw on Saturday, he just knows how to finish as well with a lovely overhead kick. And I think now he's going to get more shots off. I think Danny Ings, as long as he stays fit, will be up there and sort of the one that goes unnoticed.
And Harry, you know Ings is capable, I suppose, as much as you maybe wouldn't like to see that happen.
Oh no, I think he's more than capable to get the Golden Boot awards. But my main concern, if I was an Aston Villa fan, is now every single Premier League team knows who Aston Villa's main threat is, because it happened at Southampton where he just got marked out of so many games. And don't get me wrong, what Devon's saying is 100% correct in the fact that he does have better quality players around him. You know, you can't take that away from it. It's pure fact. It is pure facts. But the worry for him is that he does get marked out of games. And you look at the Newcastle game, yes, he did fantastically well. But there's not a lot of teams that are not worse than Newcastle defensively, but more intelligent sides, I'd say. But yeah, I think he could definitely be up there in the sort of same realms as Antonio, guessing about 15 goals. But I would be surprised if he got any more than the 15 sort of total.
You do say that he gets marked. He's now marked out of the game, but you think around the players around him as well. Is that you've got to keep your eye on Buendia in them pockets. Obviously, Ollie Watkins is probably going to be coming off the left. Leon Bailey's nippy. And even the likes of John McGinn with their late runs and Douglas Luiz will control the ball sort of deeper. You can't solely just focus on Danny Ings. And I think Villa are looking good, but not looking good yet. I think when they click, they'll look really good. And I think Danny Ings will be the biggest beneficiary of that, because especially with Southampton, there was a lot of importance on him to score the goals and sort of create his own chances, where now actually they're going to be on a plate for him.
Yeah, I think what we have to say on Antonio as well, Devon there has been saying how Lukaku looked up to him. So surely on Saturday we're expecting Chelsea to take a little cardboard cutout along to Anfield with them. That would be quite something if they followed it up.
Some sort of wacky celebration for Lukaku.
I have to say, I wasn't a huge fan of that celebration. I don't know what you thought of it. I just thought it was.
I'm not sure about
football purist, George. Is that the problem here?
I love how he even got.
At least it was in the home kit.
Wrong.
Yeah.
At least the cutout was in the home kit. I'm happy with that. They could have added a different one.
So did they make the cutouts just for that game?
No. I think the cutout looked like the one of Antonio in the old West Ham bowling shirt, the last one they had at the bowling ground. Sorry, so I think it was an old cutout. You mean when he made his debut? Was that his debut season? It might have been. Yeah, well, either that season or just the one after. But it was either way from that time. And plus, Antonio is just such a good character. You got to admire the confidence though to have it set up before the game, knowing he's going to go and get that goal. He just oozes confidence though. He's just he's someone that we're going to look back on, and I think a lot of people are going to. Obviously, we won't. Me and Harry won't, for his memories that he's given our clubs. But a lot of people are going to forget about him in a few years, and hopefully you'll get a goals compilation of Mikel Antonio, and he's so clumsy, but he's absolutely brilliant.
I have to say, I really like the fact that he's got that number 9 shirt as well. I just think there's something proper about that. That again is what was Harry saying. What did you call me, Harry, when I
called you a
off
football purist?
No, there we go, football purist. That is exactly a football
nothing
purist.
Wrong with that, George. Nothing wrong
No,
with
absolutely not. But no, there is something I like about seeing the striker wearing the number 9. And Norwich has just gone on loan to West Brom. So
were you very happy that that Burnley fielded a full 11, 1 to 11 as squad numbers the other day? Then
I'm not sure I was excited as other people were about it, but I quite liked the idea that that's what they were doing. I can only hope that Sean Dyche was naming a team, and he penciled in the first 9, and then he was like, "Should we just put them in just to complete the set?" That would be quite nice.
Now they're signing a non-British player. What's going on?
I know.
They're signing Cornet from Lyon, aren't they?
Yeah,
yeah.
I think he might feel a tad out of place in that team, but yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting tweets around that, laughing at Burnley's history of signing foreign players, isn't there? But no, it looks a promising one for them.
When
they had Defoe from Belgium, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's. They brought in Peters as well, didn't they, from Stoke? But he kind of.
I mean, Goodwinson's Icelandic as well.
Already.
Oh yeah,
that's another good one.
Gummy.
Yeah, maybe we're wrong to just assume that they never signed anyone, because we've just listed off a few there. Anyway, we're going on a little bit. We've spoken probably for a bit long enough. We hope you've enjoyed it though, and we hope that we haven't just cursed another 0-0 that's coming up between Liverpool and Chelsea, because we did that a couple of times last season. But enjoy the weekend, enjoy that game in particular, and we hope you have a better fantasy weekend as well. We hope your team gets a good result, unless you're a Leicester fan. But have a good one. Thank you very much.